I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the New Yankee Workshop. You're not going to believe this, but today we're actually going to start building a boat. Not just a little model boat, a real sailboat that we can go sailing in. Now, we found the perfect sailboat in Seattle, Washington. I'll take you there next, right here on the New Yankee Workshop.
The New Yankee Workshop features the craftsmanship of Norm Abram.
This is Lake Union in the middle of the beautiful city of Seattle, Washington, where there are more boats per capita than any city in the world. And this is the Center for Wooden Boats, a place where visitors can come and see wooden boats of historical significance, and they can even take them out for a sail. The mission is to preserve and pass on the heritage of small wooden boats. But today we're here to see a class boat called a Clancy. It's a highly refined 10-foot, 85-pound sailing dinghy, and it's built from only 29 basic parts. The designer of the boat is this man, Rich Colwin. The name of the boat, Clancy, is Rich's dog. Bob Pickett wrote a book about building the Clancy. Bob, how difficult is it to build this boat?
The boat is easy to build. It's built out of plywood and epoxy.
And about how long would it take?
Oh, 2 to 3 weeks.
How does she sail?
Fast and safe.
Now, there's a whole bunch of kids here today. What are they doing?
The kids built these boats, and they're having a race.
Oh, I don't want to miss that.
Well, let's get in the committee boat and take a look.
Sounds great. Start. So what's happening now, Bob?
They are starting across the line. They will go down to this far buoy, sail around the buoy, and come back to the finish line here.
Yeah, this looks like fun. Well, I can tell you this, building a Clancy is a lot of fun. You should allow yourself several days to put it together. And if you decide to build one, a measure drawing is available with the materials list, and you'll hear more about that before this program ends. Now, we're going to take 2 programs to build the Clancy. The first program, I want to get to this point, have the hull just about to this stage. And in the second program, we'll finish it off, rig it, and take it for a sail. Now, we found in our research that in small boat building, just about every one requires some kind of jig to get started. You build the boat, the hull, upside down. Now, here's our jig, made up of common 2x4s with plywood gussets, all assembled with screws and glue. There's some blocks at the front with the center line of the boat, and a wood strip right here which holds this centerpiece known as a crutch. And there are also braces that keep that nice and square to the frame. There's a center mold with a notch for the keelson, and the end is cut at an angle so that I can form the sides of the hull. There's a notch back here in the crutch for the aft bulkhead, and also an angled notch for the transom of the boat. Now, all the information is in the plan to build this jig. The material that I chose for the boat is a marine-grade mahogany plywood. The sheets are not 4x8, they are 4x10, and you're going to use every inch of a 10-foot sheet for the sides of the boat. Now, I want to get started today by cutting out the forward bulkhead. Now, before we cut anything, let's take a moment to talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now let's get to that bulkhead.
This holiday season, make your home shine. Decorate with lights. In an HGTV special presentation, host Randall Taylor shows you how to light up the night. From choosing the right lights to designing an overall plan, turn your home into a festive showplace with a season for lights. Wednesday at 3 Eastern on HGTV.
Come on, Woody, I got work to do.
Come on, buddy, get up there. It's a cat, Woody. It's a cat.
Comfort Therm insulation from John's Manville is wrapped in plastic.
The mailman. Go get the mailman.
So you don't have to worry about itching.
I know what'll get you down.
Which means it's easy to install.
What?
If you ever get to that point, Comfort Therm from John's Manville. You don't have to worry about itching. Available at home improvement centers.
They collect Santas, villages, lights and figurines, nutcrackers, ornaments, and decorations rarely seen.
I remember, though, my mother always had one every Christmas.
Join us as we unwrap the vintage treasures and modern traditions of today's holiday collectors.
Yeah, now you can help me pack it away.
Deck the halls with collectible treasures for the holidays. A special presentation. Friday at 3 Eastern on HGTV, Home and Garden Television.
Now I'm ready to install the front bulkhead in the jig. And I want to make sure that the vertical center line on the bulkhead aligns with the center line of the jig. Then I'll attach it with a screw. Now for the transom, which is a piece of half-inch marine plywood attached to the jig in the same manner with a couple screws. Now from a piece of 2x6 Douglas fir, I've just made the curved cut on a piece which will become the knee, and that piece goes between the transom and the keelson. Now I'm going to attach the knee to the transom with a little bit of waterproof glue and some bronze screws. I use the bronze screws so that they can take the corrosive action of the water. Now this piece of Douglas fir is for the keelson. That's the part that you see inside the boat. The front end has to be tapered to fit the shape of the bow. The next piece to mill is this stem, which attaches to the keelson. It's a piece of 1.25 inch thick fir that needs to be tapered. To taper it, I'm using my tapering jig, and I've set the angle to the correct point and adjusted the fence. The front of the stem needs to be beveled. So I've tipped my saw blade to 30 degrees and adjusted the fence. It'll take 2 passes, one on each side. Now I attach the stem to the keelson with a little bit of glue and another one of those bronze screws. Well, now I've clamped the keelson on top of the knee, slipped it into the notch of the back bulkhead, here into the mold, and into the front bulkhead. Because the bottom of the boat has a slight curve to it, I'm going to have to bend down the keelson and attach it to the jig with a screw. Now I want to bevel the entire bottom edge of the transom so that it's at the same angle as the keelson. Next, I want to build this dagger board case, and it has a slot in the middle of it that goes all the way through so that the dagger board can be slipped in when we go sailing. Now, the inside surfaces will not be able to be reached again, so I've prepared them by putting on 3 coats of marine varnish. The first thing I want to do is attach these 1x2 mahogany cleats with some glue and screws. Now, here's what the dagger board case will look like when it's assembled, but I want the joints between the side pieces to be waterproof. So that's where our epoxy system comes in. Epoxies are 2-part glues. There's a resin and a hardener that must be mixed in the right proportion. And I only have about 9 to 12 minutes with each batch, so I have to move fairly quickly. Now, I mix the resin and the hardener first, and then for a bonding operation, I want to add some filler until the glue is about the consistency of mayonnaise. Okay, that seems to be pretty good. Now what I want to do is just butter up the edges with a coat of the epoxy and clamp the pieces together. All right, now I can put the other side on and put some clamps. Now you don't need too much clamping pressure with epoxies, just a firm grip, so these spring clamps will be plenty. Now we'll further secure the pieces together with a few bronze screws. Well, now let's clamp it in place. Now with a pencil taped to a dowel, I want to reach up inside and mark out the area of the keelson that has to be cut. Now with the dagger board case removed, I can transfer my marks to the top side of the keelson. Now I've freed up the keelson dagger board assembly and mixed up some more epoxy, which I'm going to apply to all the bondable areas. Okay, now I got to carefully set everything back in place, clamp it, and attach the pieces with some screws. Now I want to trim the keelson so that it lines up with the bevel of the stem.
The world of Makita design. Innovating. Always a leader. So how do you make the best even better? Throw away the key. Makita. It's all the power you need.
We're here to demonstrate the new Weiserlock Powerbolt 3000 home access system. A fancy name for the lock on your front door. The difference is this handy remote. Easy and convenient. Powerbolt is easy to install and smart. It can open the garage door, turn your house lights off and on, and it tells you when your home is locked and secure. And with our patented Brilliance finish, it will last a lifetime. The Weiserlock Powerbolt 3000 home access system from a single remote.
This holiday, more people are choosing Lowe's, and here's why.
Lowe's is a perfect place for practical presents. Like power tools from all the top brand names, DeWalt, Porter Cable, Milwaukee, and more. That's pretty practical. And now Lowe's carries world-class Cobalt tools, made in the USA and guaranteed forever. They're the finest mechanics tools you'll find at any store.
Lowe's has something for everyone on your list, at guaranteed everyday low prices, too. When it comes to perfectly practical presents, Lowe's knows.
An ordinary cordless vacuum. The Dustbuster, the most powerful cordless handheld vacuum you can buy. The Dustbuster, now with VersaPack power, built by Black & Decker.
No matter where you walk, Isotoner's slippers will make a hard world seem a lot softer. Because of our exclusive secret sole. Isotoner slippers, they're what your feet want to wear.
When the toughest cold strikes, Kleenex presents the softest tissue now made even softer. Cold Care Ultra Comfort. The 3-layer system now places even softer layers on the outside. So Cold Care Ultra Comfort gives you the softest, most gentle touch without lotions or perfumes. And that's very comforting. Improved Cold Care Ultra Comfort. It's all your nose needs.
Well, now we're ready to set some bottom panels. And I've applied a bead of the urethane sealant. I want to secure the bottom panels to the keelson with screws every 6 inches. Now I'm using some stainless steel ones because I ran out of ones made of bronze. Because the transom is 1/2-inch plywood, I'm able to secure the bottom with a few screws. The forward and aft bulkheads are made from 1/4-inch plywood, so I can't secure them with screws. I've squared a line from the keelson, and I'm just going to use a spot of hot glue to hold those in place. Well, I think the last thing that I'm going to do today is spend some time with my block plane, trimming the edges of the bottom so that it aligns with the center mold and both the forward and aft bulkheads. Well, as you can see, I already got started this morning, and I've put on one side, planed it even with the bottom, and rounded over the corners. Let me show you how I go about it. First, I mix up some epoxy, which I'm going to apply right along the stem. And I'm also going to put some on the edge of the transom. Now, the pot life on this epoxy is 20 minutes maximum, so I've got to move quickly. Well, now I'm ready to put the skin on. I did a dry fit a little earlier, so I know about where I want to set it. Just one screw for the moment, right at the top corner. And a spring clamp down at the bottom. Now, this process is called stitching, and it's a way to secure the sides to the bottom. I just use some hot glue about every 8 or 9 inches, hold it in place until it sets, and work my way from the bow all the way to the transom. Okay, now the next task is to plane it even and round it over. Now I'm just using my block plane to put a 1/4 round radius on all the corners. Next, I want to attach the keel to the bottom of the boat with some epoxy. So I want to clean all the mating surfaces with acetone. I'm going to pour it right down the center seam, and then I'm going to spread it with my putty knife. Now the keel is a piece of Douglas fir. It's tapered at the front, and it has a hole in it for the dagger board. I formed it the same way as I did with the keelson. Now this stick acts as a guide to make sure everything is aligned through the dagger board case. Well, now I'm mixing up another batch of epoxy, and I'm using a slightly different type of filler that's ideally suited to filling the screw holes. All right, more epoxy, but this time I won't use any fillers. Now the idea is to take this 4-inch fiberglass tape and drape it over every seam and tack it in place with some epoxy. Now you'll notice that the epoxy makes the tape clear. In fact, by the time I get done, you won't even know this fiberglass tape's there. All right, now I'm just going to pour a little line on the tape, and using a plastic spatula, just saturate the tape. Now I got to move quickly before this epoxy sets up, because there's another piece of tape that goes on top of this one to reinforce the joint. The point here is to work from the corner to the edges, removing any air bubbles. Well, the epoxy is set up overnight, and believe me, it's very hard. It'll even get harder over the next 4 days, so I want to get to taking down any excess. A paint scraper is great for trimming down the putty at the screw holes. On the fiberglass seams, I want to use the scraper to just knock down the edge, just getting rid of the little roughness on the edge. And then I want to turn to my sander and feather all the edges so that they just blend in with the wood. Now that's going to take some time. Now I hand sand the corners so that I don't sand through the fiberglass tape. Now on the prototype it took me about 4.5 hours to sand all the seams, and then I put a coat of epoxy sealer on the entire hull. Let me show you what that results in. The fiberglass tape practically disappears and is very smooth. At this stage, the hull is ready for additional coats of epoxy, paint, or varnish.
Order a home video of the project you've just seen Norm build, complete with a measured drawing and materials list. Call toll-free 1-800-892-0110. The price is $24.95 plus shipping and handling. Get the measured drawing alone for only $10. The number again is 1-800-892-0110.
I want to keep my smile for life, don't you? But everybody has plaque, the leading cause of gum disease. 3 out of 4 people will have some form of gum disease in their lifetime. You can do something about it. Interplaque by Conair is clinically proven to remove nearly all plaque, even below the gum line. Its unique cleaning action can actually reverse gum disease. And now the totally cordless Odyssey, clutter-free. Recharge in any outlet in as little as 10 minutes. ADA accepted Interplaque by Conair. Keep your smile for life.
It's no fun to itch. That's why Owens Corning created Miraflex insulation. It's made with a revolutionary fiber that's virtually itch-free. So it not only saves on fuel bills, it's more comfortable to handle and install. Use Miraflex insulation because life is better when you don't itch. For a free sample of Miraflex fiber, call 1-800-GET-PINK.
Sometimes a minute lasts forever. Sometimes it happens in a heartbeat. However you measure the minutes of your life, they're always just a dime when you switch to Sprint Sense anytime. Call 1-800-PIN-DROP now and switch to get all your long-distance calls for just a dime a minute, anytime, any day. Switch now, and you'll also get 30 minutes of calls every month for life, free. The minutes of your life. As long as you're a Sprint Sense Anytime customer, 30 of them are free every month. And every call after that is just a dime a minute. Come live in a world created around you. Call 1-800-PIN-DROP now. Switch to Sprint Sense anytime and get 30 minutes of free calls every month for life. Sprint ahead.
I've just formed a couple pieces of 3/4-inch mahogany for some bulkhead stiffeners. This one goes behind the aft bulkhead. The ends are cut at an angle, actually in both directions, to fit against the sides of the bow. There's a notch in the center for a piece we'll put in later, and a little bit of a cutout to allow for the bulkhead access cover. Now, this one goes behind the bulkhead. It not only stiffens it, but it gives me a place to attach the deck structure later. Also at the bow, I have these stiffeners, except there's 2. Again, cut at an angle to fit the sides, and at the other end notch to fit around the daggerboard case. I want to use a little bit of glue and some screws to attach them in place. Here I'm making a couple partial bulkheads. It's a piece of 1/4-inch plywood with a little block on the back side and a stiffener on the other side. And what I have to do is just glue them on and attach them with screws. I've positioned the partial bulkheads halfway between the fore and aft bulkheads, and I have a level that I'm using as a straight edge. Now I'm just going to take some hot glue and tack them in place. Now here I'm mixing another batch of epoxy with some filler in it so that I can bond together 2 thin pieces of plywood. Now this piece that I'm laminating is known as a carlin, and it connects the front, the mid, and aft bulkheads. Drop them in the slots at each bulkhead and bend it to the center. That's the reason I'm using 2 pieces of plywood rather than 1, is because if it was 1/2-inch piece, I wouldn't be able to bend it this much. Now a couple screws into the mid bulkhead, and I can remove my bar clamp. Now what I'm doing is starting a process known as filleting, where the stern meets the bottom or any side meets the bottom. There's a fairly sharp angle. So by using an epoxy mix with a filler in it, I create sort of a cove, and that gives me a much better bonding surface. Now before the filler sets up, I'm going to lay in my fiberglass tape and wet it with some straight epoxy mixture. Not only does this fiberglass and epoxy add a lot of strength to the boat, but it'll make the forward and aft compartments watertight, providing flotation. Now again, as we did with all the other seams, they're going to get doubled up with another layer of fiberglass. And I got to move quickly because I can't let that resin set up before the tape is in place. This piece of 1/2-inch plywood with the notch in it is the deck beam. I'm going to start by just hot gluing it in place. This piece is filleted in and covered with fiberglass tape, just like I did in the watertight compartments. Now for the forward king plank. I've set some epoxy in all the mating surfaces, and I'll attach it with some screws. A scrap block of wood attached to the stem gives me a place to fasten the front end of the king plank. Now the aft king plank, which goes between the bulkhead and the transom, is fastened in place the same way. Now for the mast step. I'm putting down some adhesive first. And the mast step is made up of 2 pieces of 3/4-inch plywood with a 2 3/8-inch hole in the middle. And I'm going to attach it to the keelson with some 2 1/2-inch screws. Now the tube that the aluminum mast sits in is nothing more than a piece of plumber's PVC pipe. I'm just going to slip it down through the king plank into some adhesive in the block. Well, that concludes episode 1 of Building a Clancy. Next time we'll